In today's Locked On Pelicans, I'll tell you why let me stress if, Willie Green is going to get fired, there's nothing he can do to save his job. Plus, just how hard will the Pelicans tank? And can Trey Murphy III win Most Improved Player? It's a Wednesday episode of Locked On Pelicans. Let's go.
You are Locked On Pelicans, your daily New Orleans Pelicans podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another edition of Locked On Pelicans, the daily podcast covering your favorite team, the New Orleans Pelicans and NBA, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, available wherever you get your podcast and available on YouTube. I'm your host, Pelicans Insider, credential member of the media, Jake Madison, at Nola Jake on Twitter. Here's you on this Wednesday. This is the first show of the week, and I apologize for that. I'm about as sick as I've been in probably 10 years or so. So I wanted to get a show out. I want to kind of get back to doing this regularly and push through. So please bear with me if I sound a little bit bad, if I just start coughing on camera, on the audio here. We're going to do our best just to get through this week and hopefully feel better. This is truly awful. I'll tell you all that. But in today's show, I want to get into Willie Green. Is there anything he could potentially do to save his job? That's if in the first place that he's getting fired. I want to look at the Pelicans tanking and what to expect from that. And then Trey Murphy III when it comes to Most Improved Player. So that's what we're going to cover today. And of course, thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the number one Pelicans podcast covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcast and join over 11,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well. And if you're an everydayer, let me know in the comments down below. Let me know what you thought about the All-Star game. I don't really care, so I don't really want to get into it here, maybe in the off season. But if you have thoughts on it, let me know down below. So let's get into Willie Green here. And I'm going to lead with what I consider to be a statement. And that's if in capital letters is how I have it like written on my notes here. If Willie Green is getting fired, there is nothing he can do to save his job. They could go on a run at the end of the season. They could win a bunch of games. I don't think that's likely, but there's nothing he can do to save his job. At this point, if he's getting fired, the decision has basically like 90% been made. They just might want to fully wait, but that decision's more or less been made here. So I don't think there's anything you can really do to save his job. And look, that's mainly because of the injuries. You just lost Brandon Ingram, who you haven't had, but now you lose that kind of production should he have returned. You're not going to have DeJounte Murray either the rest of the way here. And this team, and we'll get into it in the next segment, is going to be outright tanking. I don't really see a world where the New Orleans Pelicans go on a big run that saves Willie Green's job, where you look at that and you're like, look at what he did here. If anything, any sort of run that this team might go on is going to need a big asterisk by it of, are you beating up on just bad teams? Like, teams that are tanking and kind of weird things going on can be a little bit crazy at the end of the year. Teams are going to kind of pivot from maybe we can make the play-in tournament to like, yeah, no, we shouldn't do this. And if you play those teams, you might get some wins, but that's not really like truly competitive basketball. And those teams at the top, particularly in the West, are fighting for playoff positioning, maybe just a playoff seed at all. And they're going to not take it easy on New Orleans. So I just don't see a world where Willie Green can do anything to truthfully like save his job or make us think differently of him as a coach. And look, it's not all been bad. It's a mixed bag, but I do think they probably need to go in a different direction next season. That's separate from David Griffin or not. I have no clue if he'll be back or not. I don't know what's going to happen there, but I think when it comes to Willie Green, I feel pretty confident that he shouldn't be the head coach next season. Now, you might remember David Griffin's media availability post-trade deadline, and he seemed to come out pretty strong and back Willie Green in that presser. But keep in mind, what else is David Griffin going to say, right? He's not going to come in and trash the head coach. No GM is going to do something like that. And Willie Green has dealt with a lot of injuries to this team over his tenure here. His first year, he didn't have Zion Williamson at all. So a lot of the past couple seasons just not being what we wanted aren't Willie Green's fault. Is he culpable in some of it? Sure. But is it like all on his shoulders? No. When you look at this season, is it all on him, or is it the amount of games they've missed due to injury? And it's more the injuries than anything else, right? That's more so than David Griffin's fault or anything. It's just injuries, and maybe they should have pulled the plug on Brandon Ingram and Zion Williamson sooner, and that's definitely a missed opportunity. But injuries have kind of been the biggest culprit here. So Griff wasn't going to say anything other than back the head coach. You just don't throw people under the bus. Like, you're not going to see that. Look at the backlash for the Dallas Mavericks as they've tried to throw Luka under the bus when it comes to this sort of thing. So what else is Griff going to say? But I'll mention this, and this is usually with like college football and other things, right? The statement of confidence in a head coach, usually the kiss of death. Because again, you're not going to be like, yeah, this guy's bad, we'll probably fire him at the end of the season. You know, that coach should just quit on the spot then. And maybe that's what you want. But that's just not how this works in the slightest. So I think they've probably kind of made up their mind. You know, it might be determined, you know, if Griff stays or not, what truly happens there. But I think Griff's going to operate it, you know, as he should, if he's here next year until he isn't. This is the same thing with Dell Demps. You know, we're going to keep going forward as long as I'm here, I'm going to keep operating as if I'm going to be here next year. If that's the case, I think Griff's going to probably move on from head coach Willie Green, who at that point would only have 1 year left on his deal. So you can kind of move on a little bit cheaper in that regard, which is probably a factor in all of this. So that statement of confidence is often a kiss of death. We've seen that regularly, especially with college coaches, right? The athletic director is like, we believe in this person, and then that dude's gone in a couple of days, couple of weeks. You know, you even see it where you trade a star player and then you still fire the head coach. That happened with the Utah Jazz with Darren Williams and Jerry Sloan. You saw a similar-ish situation with the Sacramento Kings where they first fired the head coach and then traded De'Aaron Fox, right? Like, just because you make a move doesn't mean the other domino won't fall too, even if it feels like those two things are connected here. So no matter what, I think Griff will probably move on, should probably move on from head coach Willie Green. I just don't see a world where the way the team is playing, the way the team is constructed right now, with the lack of rebounding and all that, is going to go on a run to save his job. And even if he does, even if they do, you're going to look at it and be like, oh yeah, like they're not playing competition or they're playing tanking teams, and we don't really want to like believe in this. Even some of the good teams you might be playing and things like that is, you know, might take a game or two off to rest guys for the stretch run here. New Orleans has depending on which metric you use, the 10th toughest strength of schedule remaining. There's a game against OKC, Memphis, 2 against the Rockets, who are fading a little bit, 2 against the Lakers, 2 against the Clippers, 2 against Minnesota. Their easiest remaining games are the Utah Jazz, the Charlotte Hornets, the Brooklyn Nets, who've been better than you think. 76ers could beat you. San Antonio Spurs are going to try and make a playoff push and likely beat New Orleans, and then the Miami Heat. And that's just opponent record. The Heat are going to try and be competitive. The Spurs are going to try and be competitive. Philly's going to try and be competitive. Of those easiest opponents remaining, if you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 5 of those I think are tougher than easy. And it gives you like 3 truly like winnable games. So I don't see a world where you're going to end up with Willie Green saving his job really at all. And that's going to tie into how hard are the Pelicans going to tank? I think they're going to tank pretty hard, and I'll explain why. That's coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by Prize Picks. Football season might be over, but the basketball action is just heating up, and there's no better way to get in on the excitement than with Prize Picks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. It's really simple. You just pick more or less on at least 2 player projections, and if you're right, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. With Prize Picks, you control the action all season long. So maybe you want to go with Jason Tatum for more than 29 points, Anthony Edwards for more than 25. What I love about Prize Picks is it's quick and easy to make your picks. It takes less than 60 seconds to set your lineup. Plus, their fast and secure withdrawals means you can get paid in as little as 15 minutes when you win. So download the app and use code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNBA for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. And of course, thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Join over 11,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well and become an everydayer. That means you listen Monday through Friday. Sorry, to Locked On Pelicans. I told y'all. This is going to sound kind of funny, but I haven't gone to the gym in like 2 weeks because of how bad I've been feeling here. And it feels like I have worked out so hard because my abs are so sore from coughing so much. So that's the state I'm in here. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, all that good stuff here. And of course, don't forget about the free daily Locked On Pelicans newsletter. You can subscribe over at lockedondaily.com. Get it in your inbox Monday through Friday. We'll do some bonus shows probably over the weekend to kind of get back and make sure we have like 5 episodes out this week. I want to get back to being consistent. We're going to tough through everything. If you got topics, put them in the comments down below. Make my job easier, please, right now, at least this week. But we're going to get into a lot of college basketball talk and other things throughout the week, too. I'm excited for all that. Been watching a lot more, kind of building my big board when it comes to prospects, and I'm excited about sharing that with y'all here. So let's talk about tanking. How hard the Pelicans plan on tanking going forward. And you heard David Griffin in his end of season media, or not end of season, trade deadline media availability say they're really planning on shifting to development and that they've had conversations with head coach Willie Green about that, which is good. You need everyone on board for this sort of thing because look, Willie Green isn't going to want to tank. He's going to want to try and win games to save his job. Now, again, I don't think there's any world where he can really do that, where he's going to be able to do all of that. So, I think that's something that you look at where you're like, okay, you may as well just lean in, get the checks, Willie Green, and call it a day here. So I think you're planning on having them tank hard. So this one comes from Joseph Sambo at Saints Pels 1. And he says, do we expect people like Zion, CJ, and Trey to get shut down at some point closer to the end of the season for tank purposes? And which guards need to show out the most during these opportunities between Hawkins, Jose, and to a lesser extent, Antonio Reeves? So, yes, I expect guys to get shut down to a degree. I don't think it'll be until maybe the final week of the regular season. So you're looking kind of early mid-April, maybe then, only then, are guys going to really truly be shut down. And part of that is you want Zion to play. We'll look at this more. My plan is to cover this in tomorrow's show. Zion and Ja Morant trading both these guys away because we've heard some rumors now about Ja Morant. And I want to get into that a little bit because I find it pretty interesting here of why and what that could mean for someone like Zion Williamson here. So I think eventually all those guys will get shut down. But they're also going to kind of be secretly stealth tanking in a sense, right? Zion's not playing 30 minutes per game. He's not playing the second night of back-to-backs. I don't know if they have back-to-backs remaining here. We can look that up. And I don't anticipate them to change that anytime soon. They have 1, 2, 3. They have 4 back-to-backs remaining, right? That's 4 games Zion won't play at the very minimum here. I don't expect that to change. And letting him play well in 25 minutes, look really good, and just still lose is kind of an ideal situation. But you can't just shut Zion down now. You need him to play just to build that stamina, conditioning, remind the league what he's capable of doing, just to, maybe simply to remind them. To keep Zion, working hard and not just taking days off and things like that, which is a little bit of a concern in my opinion, even though he's doing all the right things, but we've been here before too. So you still play Zion, you just play him limited minutes, but those final 4 games, final week of the regular season, I think you can shut everybody down. Trey's already locked in his extension. It doesn't really matter. Maybe he wants to try and win most improved player. I don't think that's realistic, and I'll explain why in the next segment here. But certainly he's got a reason to play. CJ seems fine. You can shut all those guys down and just be like, you know what, we're going to take it easy. Let's lose a little bit. They may not want to, but you can kind of do what's best for the team. Zion wants to play back-to-backs, and he's recently said, no, it's kind of on the team as to why we're not. So Yeah, I expect them all to get shut down, but not until very late in the regular season. You can't do that now. And I think there's reasons not to. You need these guys' trade value to be the highest. CJ's been playing pretty well recently. Keep that streak going. Should you want to move him in the offseason, you need Zion to be playing as much as possible. That's just the most important thing for him. And for a guy like Trey, you're fine there. Trey has definitely proven it this year. More on him in the next segment. So there you go. I also think you do need to work on, development is in quotes here, but I want to give extended run for some of these players to let's see it. Like throw them off in the deep end and let's see it. While you want to bring guys slowly and not make things overwhelming, because that can definitely be a problem. Having guys get a ton of minutes, allowing them to make mistakes and playing a little bit freer is an important thing. While I think Dyson Daniels' breakout year this year is a little bit overrated, though he's playing better, he's still kind of the same player he's been. One of the things he has said was like it always felt like he was looking over his shoulder in New Orleans at head coach Willie Green. If I make a mistake, am I going to get pulled and lose my playing time? Makes you play tentative. It doesn't necessarily let you be the best version of yourself as a player, and you don't want that. And that probably stifled his growth here in New Orleans a little bit. He goes to Atlanta where they have confidence in him, where they're just going to let him be. And look at kind of what's happened here, even if he's largely the same player, but he has gotten better. And that growth probably was never going to happen here in New Orleans. Same thing with Nickeil Alexander-Walker. That was just, while he's a fine role player, borderline starter, not an elite guy by any stretch of the imagination, that was never going to happen here in New Orleans. And I think a lot of that's on head coach Willie Green. So putting guys like Hawkins, and I don't think Jose needs to prove much. Hawkins and Antonio Reeves in that situation where it's like, go and do your thing, figure it out. We got you. It's okay. Is only going to help their kind of development. With Hawkins, you need to kind of make a little bit of a decision on him somewhat soon. He'll be on the team next year, certainly. But in year 2, this is not going in the way that you want. And eventually he's going to become a restricted free agent. You have player options, team options the next couple of years. But do you want that team option for $7 million in 2026, 2027 with the way that he's been playing right now? You might automatically just pick that up, but not really. So play him a bunch and let's figure out what he is capable of. Is he more than just a shooter? Can he find the right kind of role on this team? And what exactly is it? Can he be a decent enough defender? Can he go out and shoot? He's shooting 33% from 3 this year. That's not going to get it done. Can he rebound? Can he pass? Whatever it is, what is your role? Find it, fill it. And that makes you feel much better about him going forward and the money that you're going to need to spend. This team is still going to be in some salary cap trouble. That has not been fixed yet. So you need to really figure out what you have with him. That's the most important player out of all kind of the ones that we would be looking at of, hey, we need to kind of know who you are and we need to see the development here as we make important decisions about the roster. Antonio Reeves is another guy that I'm really interested in. I was really high on him. I didn't see him necessarily getting drafted. I saw him more as an undrafted free agent that you really go out after and look. They ended up drafting him and I'm very happy about that. He's had 1 or 2 standout performances. At 6'5", he's got decent length and size, and projects like he could be a decent enough defender. He's playing 10 minutes per game. Throw him in there. He's not shooting particularly well at all, but play him a bunch. Just let him kind of work through some things and figure out kind of what his role, what he does at the NBA level is. So, let's do that, right, with him. Sorry, I'm getting text messages and other things. So, yeah, I think Reeves should play a bunch. And I think those are the 2 guys, Hawkins and Reeves, that you want to see the most from during the stretch. I also think it's true for Carlo Makovic. I don't love that 3 big lineup of Carlo, Misi, and Zion. That has not worked. But Carlo has shown some flashes. And was it last week? I described a play where he really helped the team get the win against, I think it was Sacramento. It's all blurry right now. Where, he was moving and had 6-7 actions in that play that led to a bucket with him scoring. I'm very intrigued by him as a player. He's got a lot to gain from all of this, and they should be playing him. He, whether it's starting or whether it's running him against backups, either one's fine right now. Just get him some burn on the court and some playing time, right? Same for Brandon Boston Jr. They're going to want to sign him from a two-way deal to a full NBA contract. But what's his role? Is it just the gunner off the bench? He was playing some point guard for the team earlier on in the year. Is he a shooter? Is he not? Figuring that out. Can he change his shot diet from being a little too much like Brandon Ingram and that mid-range kind of shot diet, shot selection, to a little bit more efficient of at the rim or from three? I'm curious about all that because I think that's the type of thing that's going to really factor in to what role he's going to play, but he'll be cheap enough that he'll definitely be on the team next season. So yeah, there's a lot to gain for a lot of these guys, and I think they should be leaning into it. And I'm looking forward to talking about how well or poorly these guys are playing as we kind of figure out who is part of the Pelicans' future and who isn't. This is also why Willie Green's not going to save his job. These guys get developed or don't. Look, a lineup of Hawkins, Brandon Boston Jr., Carlo Makovich, Misi, there's someone else I threw in there too. That's not winning very many NBA games right now, right? None of those guys project as like elite starters or anything, but they project as role players, guys that can come off the bench. That's important. There's an important place for all those guys. They're not going to win very many games. So you're losing, you're developing. Zion looks good in his limited minutes. That's a win-win-win for everybody here. And I think that's what you'll end up seeing. All right, coming up next, let's talk about Trey Murphy III for most improved player. Probably not going to happen. I'll tell you why, and I'll also tell you why it doesn't matter. That's coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by our sponsor, Intuit TurboTax. Taxes was waiting and wondering and worrying if you were going to get any money back. And then waiting, wondering, worrying some more. Now, Taxes is matching with a TurboTax expert who can do your taxes as soon as today. An expert who gives your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return while you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on your day. An expert who will find every deduction possible and file every form, every investment, everything with 100% accuracy. Also, you can get the most money back guaranteed. So no waiting, no wondering, no worrying. Now this is Taxes. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live full service, real-time updates only in the iOS mobile app. See guaranteed details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Join over 11,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well. We're going to try and come to y'all the rest of the week here. It is a struggle right now. I'm like literally sweating and stuff as we're doing this show. We're going to try and do some bonus shows to make up for the two missed earlier in the week. There will definitely be a new show tomorrow. I want to look at Zion Williamson, Ja Morant too a little bit as well. So in trading both those guys, it's a little intriguing here. So let's look at Trey Murphy III. Most improved player. Is that a realistic option for him? I'm gonna get in front of this right now. No, I don't think it is. I don't think Trey Murphy has a chance really at winning most improved player. It does not mean that he is not very improved. He is extremely improved this year. But when you kind of look at the past winners, we looked at this with Yves Misi too. I was like, he's not going to win Rookie of the Year. He might finish in the top 3, but he's fallen off even from that. If you look at the past couple of winners here, last year was Tyrese Maxey. Before that was Larry Markkinen, then Ja Morant, then Julius Randle, then Brandon Ingram. Let's just go with the past 5 here, going back to BI in New Orleans. There's definitely some like clear criteria that jump up, right? We looked at, how CJ McCollum, I looked at this before the season started of if they move CJ to the bench, he could easily win 6th man of the year. All the injuries meant that didn't need to happen. But so you look at this and there's definitely some like kind of clear criteria that like starts to appear here. Maxey's a little bit of an outlier for it when you look at his per game numbers. He went from 20.3 points per game to 25.9. So a jump of about 5.5 points per game or so. When you look at it, his rebounds went up a little bit, but his assists jumped by 50%, almost 50%, 40%, from 3.5 to 6.2 assists per game. He also led them to a winning record, was really filling in when Joel Embiid wasn't in there with all of the James Harden drama, and kind of became, in my opinion, last year, the unquestioned leader, at least that season, of the Philadelphia 76ers. That really mattered, and that really boosted his case for most improved player, even if there were guys that kind of jumped up a little bit more statistically. But you go to Lauri Markkanen, his most improved player year, he went from 14.8 points per game to 25.6. So a jump of over 10 points per game at that point, a little bit over that. His numbers improved dramatically in that year. He added 3 rebounds per game from 5.7 to 8.6. That really mattered too. He shot the 3 ball incredibly well on more volume than he's ever done. One of the things, though, I think is worth looking at too is per 36 minutes. He went from playing 31 minutes to 34 and a half in that most improved player year, right? Like, does that equate? If you play more minutes, you're just going to score more, it feels like. Per 36 minutes, it was pretty similar. It was a little over 9 points per game of a jump per 36 minutes. Same thing for the rebounding. You look for those points per game jump of like 5 or more, ideally in the 10 range is the magic number there. And then do you get a 25 to 50% boost in one or two other statistical categories? Maxey kind of had that in the assists. Markkanen had that had the points and the rebounds. Ja Morant, when he won Most Improved Player, basically did a similar thing. It was his third year. He went from 19.1 points per game to 27.4 per game, while his rebounds went up about 2 per game, and he shot from 3 better than he had ever had been before, and led them to a 50-win season. Winning matters when it comes to this sort of stuff. So per 36 minutes, his jump was 21.1 points per game to basically 30 points per game. So about 9 right there. The assists dropped a little bit, but the rebounds went up. The shooting went up too. And a good record as the unquestioned best player on that team. That'll do it. Julius Randle's a little bit weirder. This was, I believe, his second year in New York where he won Most Improved Player here. And this was a lot to do with his defense. But he went from 19.5 points per game to 24.1. His rebounds went up slightly, but the assists really jumped up. 3.1 to 6. So a 50%, 100% boost. That's what it is, 100% bonus boost, whatever I'm saying, with that sort of thing. He also shot the 3 ball better than he'd ever had before at 41.4% on large enough volume here, but his defense that season was pretty incredible for him. That was not something we had ever expected from Julius Randle, especially after watching him here in New Orleans. And then final thing we're going to look at before we talk Trey here, Brandon Ingram, right? This one's pretty obvious. It was because his three-point shooting went up. He went from 19.4 points per 36 minutes to 25.3. So about a little, right around 5-6 points per game. But his 3-point attempts went from 1.9 to 6.6, and he shot it at 39%. That's a pretty significant increase. He added about an assist per game and a rebound per game per 36 minutes. He looked like a different player than he had before. So let's compare that and all those guys to Trey Murphy here in what we've seen in his stats this season, right? Let's just do the per game numbers, 14.8 to 22.4. That's kind of right in the realm of the points per game numbers you need to go up. So there is that. His assists are up from 2.2 to 3.6. The rebounding slightly up at 4.9 to 5.2. So you've got the points, I would say, but the other numbers just really aren't there necessarily for the growth from him. He's taking about 1 more 3-point per game per 36 minutes, but he's playing about 6 minutes more per game than he was before. So let's look at it on a per 36 minute basis, right? 17.9 points per game last season to 22.6. So you're still in the kind of right realm of all of that, but that's under 5 points per 36 minutes improvement. His assists are up by about 2.6 to 3.7. However, his rebounding has gone down from 6 rebounds per 36 minutes to 5.2. Now, the free throws are up, and I think that's worth noting, from 3.2 to 4.8 per game, showing kind of the growth from him. But I don't think voters are going to look at that. And if anything, his 3-point attempts are actually down. But that's the trick here. To me, that's the most important number and why I don't care about most improved here. This is going to sound weird. So bear with me. I'm saying I'm actually kind of happy that his 3-point attempts are down per 36 minutes. And you're probably like, what the heck, Jake, you want guys to shoot more threes. And I do. But I also want you to have a very good shot chart. And that's where this gets interesting. So based on those per 36 minute numbers, like it's just not going to qualify him for all that. And because he missed so many games, he's at 39 games played. I don't even know if he would qualify since you've got to hit 65. And I'm not sure how many games the Pelicans have remaining, though we can easily figure that number out. Hold on here. They have 27. He can get there if he plays every single game. He can play a max of 66 games, so that's kind of funny. He can get there and actually qualify for the award. So that's interesting here. But with Trey and his play this season, the most impressive number to me is not the scoring or anything, right? We talked about his handle, and in the offseason I said I want to see his handle get better. Kind of come up with a plan when you're attacking the basket. He is shooting more shots in the restricted area this season than he has at any point in his career. Last year, he took 14.2% of his shot attempts in 0 to 3 feet, so essentially the restricted area. This year, it's up to 21.6. So over a 7.4% increase in shot attempts at the rim. He's also shooting 73.9% at the rim. And he's getting fouled and going to the line even more. That's a really good shot profile. You can take one less three per game if you're making that far more shot attempts per game at the rim, which is what he is doing. So he is playing, in my opinion, exceptionally well this season. He has drawn at this point 88 shooting fouls this season. And that is already a career high for him. The next closest was his sophomore year where he played 79 games and drew 73 of them. He is already 15 more than that in like basically half as many games. That's a really impressive stat. So most improved player, the award would be nice. He's doing these little kind of subtle things that are not going to get him most improved player, but also potentially make him an all-star level player. And so when I watch him play, that's more impressive to me than anything else. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let me know in the comments down below. And that's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Pelicans. This wasn't too bad. I think I only had like a coughing fit once. We'll be back tomorrow. We'll look at John Morant, Zion Williamson, trading those guys, not for each other, but the situations around them, because I find that kind of interesting. We'll break that all down coming up in tomorrow's episode of Locked On Pelicans. We'll do a big board on Friday too, get you set for some draft talk, maybe some bonus shows over the weekend. Again, apologies for this show being out late. Just struggle to record. Appreciate y'all listening. As always, I'm your host, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter, and I'll be back with y'all tomorrow.